Jesus going to the cross on Friday, the stones rolled away on Sunday, and because he rose, we can rise again. But it comes through the lamb. The word paschal, it's a paschal lamb or a pascha. Pascha means Passover. Back in that day, they're supposed to take the blood of the lamb over the doorpost, and then God would send an angel of death to defeat, kill anything that was not marked by the lamb's blood. And so that's how the Exodus came. Pharaoh said, hey, I don't want any more, you can go.
Jesus didn't do anything by accident, and it didn't just happen. And when you're looking at your leadership, not just paying attention to the details around you, but the details of yourself. So you need to have the same values as a person that you do as a leader. Welcome back to the Pastors Podcast. I'm Jill.
And I'm Greg.
And we are the pastors, and it's been a couple weeks since we got a chance to post, but it's been very busy. So we are jumping on here to give you guys just some fun stuff about Easter, just some stuff you might not know about Easter.
Easter's coming up, and I know for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, those are big days that people typically either go out or they make a dinner at home. So what kind of food do we have for those?
Well, here's the thing. I need to say this because I have a soapbox on the situation. We have different meats for different holidays, people. Turkey is not the answer to every holiday. So Thanksgiving, turkey. Christmas, we look to the Grinch for guidance and we get roast beef. Roast beef. And then in Easter, ham is generally what we have. There are different meats for different holidays. Now, that's just my own soapbox. Whatever you guys do is great. That's just how I feel about the subject. But I guess this year we're doing something different.
I heard in my home, our home, we're going to have
lamb. Which I've never cooked. I love to cook, but I've never cooked lamb, and I don't think my mom has either, and I don't think my mom likes lamb. So this will be an entertaining situation.
Speaking of lambs.
Speaking of
lambs, interesting to think about what that means. Obviously, Jesus is the lion and the lamb. The lion that can defeat anything, and the lamb that came as a sacrifice, humility, timid, laid his life down for us so we could have a relationship with God and live eternally in heaven when you make that individual decision to ask Jesus into your life. This is really important. This is probably my favorite holiday. I really love Christmas. I think that's exciting. The birth of Jesus. We talked about when Jesus might have been born. But the real issue is that he was born and came into this world. But now this is the death of Jesus. This is Jesus going to the cross on Friday, dying for us. And on Saturday, he's in hell preaching to the demons down there, victory. And then obviously the stones rolled away on Sunday. And because he rose, we can rise again. But it comes through the lamb, right? And so you have to go back to the word paschal. It's a paschal lamb or a pascha. Pascha means Passover, and the original lamb used was back in Exodus in the Bible when the people are going to be exiting the country of Egypt, all right, and kind of going over to the promised land. Moses is leading them out, Pharaoh, that story. But what happened in that day is there was a lamb, and God sent Moses a message to give to the Israelites who were kept captive as slaves in Egypt that they're supposed to take a lamb, and they're supposed to go get the lamb on the 10th of Nisan. So it's not Nisan, the car, it's Nisan. It's the month of Nisan. And on the 10th day, they're to get a lamb, and then they're supposed to kind of keep the lamb for 3 or 4 days. On the 14th, then they're supposed to kill the lamb, sacrifice the lamb. And back in that day, they're supposed to take the blood of the lamb over the doorpost, and then God would send an angel of death to defeat, kill anything that was not marked by the lamb's blood. And so that's how the Exodus came. Pharaoh said, hey, I don't want any more, you can go. And then Moses was able to take the people out. But that's carried over now into Jewish tradition, right? And so on the 10th of the month, they will go purchase a lamb, and then all the vendors would come into Israel.
We're talking about Bible times.
Bible times. Well, and then, I think...
Passover still happens. They just don't sacrifice lambs anymore, to my knowledge.
In that time, for sure, what they would do, and it's in the Bible, they would take go buy the lamb from a vendor, and it would be a spotless lamb. They're trying to find the perfect spotless lamb. The lamb doesn't have a blemish.
Right.
And then they would come back keep it, so make a pet out of it, so the kids would love the lamb, pet the lamb. But on the 14th day of Nisan, they would then kill the lamb, and then that would be what they would have a Passover. So called a Paschal lamb, or a Pascha, meaning Passover.
Yeah. And we've been to Israel, and so we were able to see kind of the room, the idea of where Jesus would have had his Passover.
Right.
The last Passover that they talk about right before he's betrayed and killed. So that was actually pretty cool. We didn't get to go see the temple and see that eastern gate, that sheep's gate where, Jesus would often enter. And they would bring that sacrifice through that gate. It's also the royal gate. So there's a lot of stuff there. We're probably not going to go.
Well, that is interesting. So you have the temple and the Temple Mount, right? And so when you're facing the Temple Mount, then you have to the left is the west and to the right is the east. And when you're looking at it, and up on the top, you'll have the temple. And the temple is divided into 3 sections. You have the court of women, the court of men, and the court of priests. And you have to be Jewish to be able to be in those courts. If you weren't, you're a Gentile selling things, you're in the court of Gentiles. So the court of Gentiles is the rest of the outline there. So then Jesus, because he was Jewish, could go in through the court of women to the court of men, but he was not recognized as a priest. So the priests would take the sheep or the lambs, and that's where they would, and the doves, and that's where they do the sacrifice, enter into the Holy of the Holies. But the point of this exercise is when you are facing the temple, to the east is the sheep gate. So the steps would be coming up on the left side, the west side, and they would enter, most of the people would enter into the temple that way. But then over on the east side, they would have what's called a sheep gate. And that's where they would take the sheep and they would bring them up, and that's what they would enter into the court of priests, and that's what they would sacrifice. Jesus did come up through the sheep gate for a reason, for a purpose, and the sheep gate is next to the pool of Bethesda. So when you read in the Bible, the pool of Bethesda is where Jesus took the paralyzed man and healed the man because he couldn't get into the pool. And so right there at that entrance on the east side is the sheep gate. Jesus then symbolically, on purpose, walked through the sheep gate as the sacrifice, perfect lamb, unblemished, not stained, the only one that could be the perfect sacrifice. All the priests were looking for the perfect sacrifice. And it says in the Bible, even though that God said, hey, you can sacrifice birds, you can sacrifice sheep, goats, but there's not really any perfect sacrifice to get to a way to God except through Jesus in the New Testament. So these priests would be taking these animals, trying to sacrifice on behalf of the people and on behalf of themselves, that God would accept them and have to keep doing it over and over. That's where you get going back to the priest. Please forgive my sin, forgive my sin. But now that Jesus came once and for all, on our own, we can enter into individually, once we accept Jesus, into the Holy of Holies on our own. We don't need a priest. We don't need a pastor. You can have a daily relationship with Jesus because of the perfect sacrifice that the Lamb was slain in order for us to have the blood that washed away our sins once and for all, to enter into a relationship with God once and forever.
Yeah, it's good. It's just there's a lot of Jesus didn't do anything by accident, and it didn't just happen. So when he does something and they say something like Jesus did this and it seems really mundane, or he walked through this gate, or he went through this door, he sat down on this well. There's a lot of things John says that Jesus did that they didn't write about. And that doesn't mean they weren't important, but if it's written about, that means it was very important. So when you're reading through the Bible, every time you see something that you just kind of gloss over because you're like, oh, that can't be that important, I would challenge you to go back and try to study that a little bit. Why? Jesus didn't always enter Jerusalem into that temple through that gate. But when he did, something happened. So as you go back through Scripture, and when it tells you he entered into the temple from that gate from the east side, he does something important because he does it on purpose. I would just challenge you guys, not just when you read the Bible, but just pay attention. There are details in life that are incredibly important. And when you're looking at your leadership, not just paying attention to the details around you, but the details of yourself. So we look at that spotless lamb, and it has no defects. That's why it's worthy to be sacrificed to make some sort of atonement, which we could never fully realize, which is why Jesus came and was the perfect sacrifice, and he was completely pure. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to be, because you can't be, because you're a human. However, the more you live your life by those values that we've talked about, the less you're going to have to worry about later on. So if you know you're always saying, hey, these are the things that I always do because these are my values, you're not going to have to go, oh, did I say the wrong thing? Did I do the wrong thing? Did I make that wrong choice? So as a leader, we can really learn something about the fact that, there's purpose in things that we do, and there's purpose in who we are as a person, not just as that leader. It needs to be the same. So you need to have the same values as a person that you do as a leader. And I know you've really talked about that, because then you're not like, okay, how do I act at work versus how do I act at home versus how do I act at church? Because I was a pastor's kid growing up. And when you're younger, you're like, okay, here's my church friends, here's how I act, which is not right. It just kind of happens as a kid. And then you act this way with your other friends because they're at school. But there's a moment in your life when you're like, I'm not two different people. And I don't need to be two different people. So if you can take that and go, okay, Jesus was the same yesterday, today, and forever. He was spotless. He was perfect. He was the perfect sacrifice, which, again, you're not going to be perfect. However, the more you can pay attention to those details and stay the same from location to location or from setting to setting, you're going to have a lot less to worry about as a leader.
The Bible challenges all of us as Christians. He's holy, so we should be holy. So strive to be holy. So,
yeah, that's good. So that's just a quick thought on sheep, lambs, Easter, Jesus. Just kind of a cool thing that maybe a lot of people don't think about.
Again, I think it's not perfection, it's direction.
Right.
So the question for you and I today and us today is, what direction are we headed in?
All right, well, happy Easter, you guys. We hope you have an incredible Easter week and weekend. And make sure you are subscribing and liking this podcast, sharing this podcast, because it has amazing leadership content that we just really like to give to you. And hit up the website, becomingresources.com, for more leadership tips and content that can really help your journey. You got anything?
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.